So what is up, guys? Nick here, helping you to master your technology. iPhone 14 honest review after 30 days. It's an iPhone 13 all over again. Have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching. Nick here, and peace. Nah, I'm just messing with you. But honestly, let's get that out of the way really quickly. Yes, this phone is nearly identical to an iPhone 13. The cameras are slightly bigger, a couple different colors, and it does have eSIM only support. Other than that, they basically use the same body once again. It's not really a bad thing. This form factor works. It works well. It's a very good size. It's a very premium feeling phone. And let's talk about, the colors to begin with. The colors on this phone are quite nice, especially this blue. And I do have the product red iPhone 14 Plus, which is the same phone, essentially just larger with better battery life. You can kind of see how it looks as well. By comparison, these are the two, I would say, best colors for me. Personally, I like the colors that stand out more. You do have Starlight though, Midnight, and there is purple as well for this phone. There might be a new spring color as well. We'll have to see later on next year. But this does retain that notch that you'll find on the iPhone 13 models, including the 13 Pro and Pro Max. So it still looks kind of classic at this point. Well, not classic, but it looks like last year's phone. You can see we do have the Lightning port, no USB-C, precisionally drilled holes. On the side, the 5G millimeter wave is a little bit larger here. Power button, a nice location. You can see yourself a antenna slit right there. Another one there. And definitely the cameras are definitely larger just by a hair than last year. Top, nothing there. It's just a clean build on the edges. Silent switch, volume rockers, eSIM support only. So you're not going to see a physical SIM tray. And I did notice the Apple logo looks slightly bigger, but there's nothing really much else to say. The phone feels relatively light and pretty comfortable day to day, although the edges are a little bit sharper than we find on older rounded edges like the iPhone 11, for example. I gotta say, this phone just feels nice, just like the iPhone 13 did, but it doesn't feel dramatically different, and it doesn't feel, after 30 days, any better really. It just feels like another iPhone with some camera upgrades. So definitely pretty decent. Now, when it comes to display, you're still using that same Super Retina XDR OLED panel. Again, still using notch, but that is pretty much on a lot of iPhones anyway, millions actually. And you could see, of course, it does cut into the content a little bit, but I don't find it nearly as distracting as the dynamic island. So if you still want the notch, you might as well pick up a 14 or 14 Plus this year, because these are probably going to go to dynamic island next year. So do keep that in mind. Also, it does have really good brightness, 800 nits, and it has a peak capable brightness of 1200 nits. I still find the 800 nits plenty bright enough for daily usability, and the 1200 nits, it's still usable outdoors. I will say though that the 60 hertz, a lot of people seem to say is terrible right now at that price point, $799 for this phone. But honestly, iOS is just so smooth that it's not a deal breaker, and you're still going to see a lot of people rocking the iPhone 14. I've already seen a couple people rocking this. I haven't seen a single person yet with a Pro model. That could be because they're harder to get right now. I'm not sure. But even being 60 hertz, a month later, I got to tell you, it's still a very smooth phone. It's got a lot to do with iOS. So keep that in mind. 60 hertz, still smooth, not butter like the 120 hertz. That's basically what I could say about that. But it is still a very sharp panel, and Retina displays have always been very nice, so that's not going to change. However, we've been having a lot of iPhones for a long time, so there's nothing really impressive about saying, oh, it has a sharp display. I'm not even going to cover software too much, because app library, home screen of apps, widgets, iOS 16, new lock screens, we're done. That's about it. 16.0.3 on board right now. We're done. There's nothing else to say. It's smooth. You know iOS at this point. One thing though, related to the area software, is that you do have a nice collection of wallpapers here. Annoyingly, they removed them from all the other iPhones and giving you just the base. But you do get this special set of wallpapers here for iPhone 14. That's something slightly different in this software. Talked about it before, action mode, stuff like that. A couple changes every year in camera. Other than that, you're going to experience the same thing on any other iPhone, which is not a bad thing. Everybody seems to really like iOS, so definitely no change here, still very good. Now, a lot of people are mad that Apple decided to use the A15 CPU in here. I'm personally not. I don't feel like we need to have a new chip every single time around. I think what people are a little bit more annoyed with is that this phone looks and feels almost identical to last year. For example, if they would have put Dynamic Island on here and they would have changed it up a little bit more, even with an A15, it would have been more exciting, I feel like. And for some reason, it seems to perform, it feels a little snappier somehow than the iPhone 13. Maybe it's my perception off a little bit, but it just feels like, if I was to define it, to be like just a hair snappier. Overall performance is solid. It just doesn't have that buttery smooth 120 hertz. And I think they could bring ProMotion down to the regular line in the form of something like 90 hertz, maybe not quite as smooth as the Pros, but still quite nice. Overall, I gotta say performance has been blazing on every single iPhone 14, including the 14, 14 Plus, Pro, and Pro Max. 30 days later, I actually really like this phone recommendation for cameras. I would actually say go get this phone if you like taking photos, because this thing has produced some tremendous results, especially in video with action mode. I like the size of the 6.1 and not having to pay for the Pro to get something like action mode. I also really think the front-facing camera is super good on this phone. So this is a great vlogging phone, regardless of the fact that you don't have the zoom. You don't really need zoom a lot in things like vlogging and stuff like that. You can just use the main cameras. And besides zoom, this feels like 80 to 90% what an iPhone Pro is. You know, it doesn't have the 48 megapixel, but who wants those large file size all the time anyway? The camera is beautiful on here. And I think that if you're looking for one of the best experiences on a phone when it comes to camera, you want to consider the iPhone 14. It definitely does a phenomenal job. This is one of the main areas I would say pick this up. If you want improvements over the iPhone 11, for example, the iPhone 12, or even if you're coming from something older, you're going to love the iPhone 14 camera system on both front and rear. Nice upgrades here. And the audio is a little bit louder than last year, just by a hair, not too much, but definitely a little bit louder. And talking about battery, I have to say 1 month later, this has been a pretty solid iPhone. You can go through a full day of use without worrying too much about the battery life. I've even been able to extend it into the next day with this phone, going just a couple hours, but not too much. But overall, not bad on the battery life. And 30 days later, I have to say that with the Qualcomm X65 in here, I had better reception strength than I did on the iPhone 13, although that phone was pretty good as well. Better 5G performance and call quality was solid. This is just a really good overall iPhone. And at the end of the day, 30 days later, I just think that, you know, this iPhone is just a standard, solid iPhone for people who don't want all the latest and greatest tech upgrades. They just want a really good, modern, new iPhone, and their old iPhone is just getting old, and they're happy with what, you know, an iPhone 11 was, or they're happy with an iPhone 10R was, or they were happy with an iPhone 12. They just want a new phone. That's it. They don't need to have the third camera. They don't need to have the deep purple, all those pro features. They just want a new iPhone. That's great. I think this one is that, as well as the 14 Plus. But if you're looking for the best value out there, Pixel 7, Pixel 7 Pro, those phones are close to these prices and give you more specs. So do consider those if you want to try Android and you want a better value for money. Do keep that in mind. They do have those options as well as some Samsung phones. But if you want to stay in the iOS ecosystem, these are still solid options. I think they can make some improvements specifically to the display smoothness, and maybe even adding a fourth camera to the Pro and a third camera to the main regular iPhone models like these right here. And a lot of people are going to cop these, I think, for the holiday season, just because their prices will likely be more attainable for those looking for carrier deals and subsidies and things like that. Let me know if you are picking up an iPhone 14. Did you get one already? Did you plan on getting a 14 Plus? Let me know down below in the comments. Thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you haven't already. Nick here. Be sure to be well, and peace.